paid through a lawyer, till she was 8 years old. At that time, the allowance stopped. The lawyer had no explanation to offer. Nobody came to look after her. Nobody wrote. The Oldershaws saw her, and thought she might answer to exhibit. And the woman parted with her for a trifle to the Oldershaws, and the Oldershaws parted with her for good and all to the Blanchards. That's the story of her birth, parentage, and education. She may be the daughter of a duke, or the daughter of a costermonger. The circumstances may be highly romantic or utterly commonplace. Fancy anything you like. There's nothing to stop you. When you've had your fancy out, say the word, and I'll turn over the leaves and go on." "Please to go on, Jemmy, please to go on." "The next glimpse of Miss Gwilt," resumed Bashwood the younger, turning over the papers, "is a glimpse at a family mystery. The deserted child was in luck's way at last. She had taken the fancy of an amiable young lady with a rich father, and she was petted and made much of at the great house, in the character of Miss Blanchard's last new plaything. Not long afterward, Mr. Blanchard and his daughter went abroad, and took the girl with them in the capacity of Miss Blanchard's little maid. When they came back, the daughter had married, and become a widow, in the interval; and the pretty little maid, instead of returning with them to Thorpe Ambrose, turns up suddenly, all alone, as a pupil at a school in France. There she was, at a first-rate establishment, with her maintenance and education secured until she married and settled in life, on this understanding, that she never returned to England. Those were all the particulars she could be prevailed on to give the lawyer, who drew up these instructions. She declined to say what had happened abroad. She declined even, after all the years that had passed, to mention her mistress's married name. It's quite clear, of course, that she was in possession of some family secret, and that the Blanchards paid for her schooling on the Continent to keep her out of the way. And it's equally plain that she would never have kept her secret as she did, if she had not seen her way to trading on it for her own advantage at some future time. A clever woman, as I've told you already, a devilish clever woman, who hasn't been knocked about in the world, and seen the ups and downs of life abroad and at home, for nothing." "Yes, yes, Jemmy, quite true. How long did she stop, please, at the school in France?" Bashwood the younger referred to the papers. "She stopped at the French school," he replied, "till she was 17. At that time something happened at the school which I find mildly described in these papers as something unpleasant. The plain fact was, that the music master attached to the establishment fell in love with Miss Gwilt. He was a respectable middle-aged man, with a wife and family, and, finding the circumstances entirely hopeless, he took a pistol, and, rashly assuming that he had brains in his head, tried to blow them out. The doctor saved his life, but not his reason. He ended where he had better have begun, in an asylum. Miss Gwilt's beauty having been at the bottom of the scandal, it was, of course, impossible, though she was proved to have been otherwise quite blameless in the matter, for her to remain at the school after what had happened. Her friends, the Blanchards, were communicated with, and her friends transferred her to another school, at Brussels this time. What are you sighing about? What's wrong now?" "I can't help feeling a little for the poor music master, Jemmy. Go on." "According to her own account of it, Dad, Miss Gwilt seems to have felt for him too. She took a serious turn, and was converted, as they call it, by the lady who had charge of her in the interval before she went to Brussels. The priest at the Belgium school appears to have been a man of some discretion, and to have seen that the girl's sensibilities were getting into a dangerously excited state. Before he could quiet her down, he fell ill, and was succeeded by another priest, who was a fanatic. You will understand that sort of interest he took in the girl, and the way in which he worked on her feelings, when I tell you that she announced it as her decision, after having been nearly 2 years at the school, to end her days in a convent. You may well stare. Miss Gwilt, in the character of a nun, is the sort of female phenomenon you don't often set eyes on." "Did she go into the convent?" asked Mr. Bashwood. "Did they let her go in, so friendless and so young, with nobody to advise her for the best. Chapter 15.